Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you have questions, we answer them 24/7. Well, we don't answer them 24/7. We take them 24/7. So we answer them every morning, 7 days a week. So if you've got those questions, of course, you can throw them into Makana. You can ask questions, vote on questions, and chat about those questions if you'd like. If you're not a Makana, of course, you can go to askofficehours.global. That's Ask Office Hour. Oops, that's a different one. That's the wrong one. Askofficehours.global. Just go to askofficehours.global, and you can ask your questions there. Let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Bill, what do we got?
First one comes this morning from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida. And Andy wonders, he needs to record Zoom ISO feeds for post-production concurrent with a live show, which is switched using NDI. And he's wondering what software we might recommend for him.
Go, Nikki.
Yeah, if you're okay with if it's sufficient for you to record the compressed NDI feeds, I would look at an application called LiveMind. Let me make that a little larger. LiveMind runs on both PC and Macs, although I've only used it on PCs. It can record, I believe, up to 16 channels of NDI. Another one for Mac OS is called the Movie Recorder from Softron.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Guy Cochran in Seattle, and he says, what can you do with NDI Bridge?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So it basically, NDI Bridge means that you can secure two or more networks that are using entirely different NDI structures together. Basically, what you do is you bring it up, and then you set it up so other people can connect to you, and they can see your NDI, you can see their NDI. Last night we had, I think it's kind of like a LAN party. We had an NDI party, and we just basically threw out some NDI out on our networks, and then everybody else saw it, and they could connect to it, and they could create different things. Of course, next week what we're going to be doing is we're going to be really getting into the 10-bit part of NDI 6 and really trying to figure out how it's going to work, how we can break it and bring it down. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and just a lot of different things that you can do if you have the bandwidth with NDI 6.
Next question.
Next one comes from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, do you think the motion graphics / rundown features in Unreal Engine 5.4 will bring more traditional broadcast graphics professionals, like expression operators, to Unreal Engine, or is this an extension of the traditional UE workflow and talent pool?
Well, I definitely think it's designed to bring more people in from traditional areas. So I think that, folks that are very well embedded, whether they're using Expression or VizRT or Chiron, probably going to stay with that for quite some time, but they'll start experimenting with this. I mean, this is a play that rolls out over the next 3 to 5 years. But what you will see are people that are kind of, I think, in between. So the people who are a little bit more than a mom and pop, live streaming process, so less than 10 employees doing their thing, those are probably not the target for this. People with about probably 10 to 50 employees are probably the place that this will become the most interesting, because they can really be competitive. They can do things that they wouldn't be able to normally do at the price point. So I think that's where it's really interesting. And I think that, we'll be spending a lot of time on it as a company that lives in that realm. And I know we'll spend a lot of time looking at, we're going to look at how we add Unreal Engine to our broadcast graphics, and we'll probably experiment with it here. I think we're really happy with SPX as a general graphics, but we'll keep on experimenting and seeing where this fits in combination with what we do. A lot of times graphics are done by multiple systems, so you might see on a big system, you might see some kind of Unreal execution, a Chiron execution, a VizRT execution, all happening at the same time. And they're oftentimes happening with each other depending on what their strengths are. So we're going to keep on looking at where this fits in to the puzzle that we're working on. Next question.
Samuel Nordvik comes in all the way from Norway this morning. What do you think about the new Rode Interview Pro handheld mic with built-in recording and 2.4 gigahertz wireless transmission?
Jeffrey?
So I got to play with the headset or with the handheld with back at NAB, and it looked pretty impressive. The one cool feature about it is you don't need to set it up for any type of streamer or anything like that. You could just take that microphone out, interview somebody, bring it back in, download the audio, and then play it that way if you wanted to. You could definitely hook it up to, I think it's the Series 4 or better wireless Go systems. And of course, you can also set it up to your Rodecaster to just instantly have a wireless 2.4 gigahertz back and forth. The capsule, I believe, is a 58 knockoff. And of course, it's got 32-bit float to the whole thing. So you'll be able to make any type of corrections that you need to. So from what I saw from there and heard from there, it was a pretty decent microphone. And I do have a video thing up from NAB up on my website.
Go ahead, Mickey.
With regards to the wireless capabilities, that runs on 2.4 gigahertz, so certainly not something I would use in a professional setting that on productions that matter. I'd rather use a wire than something with a product that uses 2.4 gigahertz wireless.
You go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was just going through the specifications on it. It is not a dynamic capsule. It is a electret condenser capsule. It has the battery is non-removable lithium ion. You got to charge it. I'm not sure the battery life on it. It's omnidirectional as opposed to being cardioid. So that may be good for a handheld mic. Then as you get a little off axis, it just depends on how close you get. It has about a 74 dB signal to noise ratio, which seems pretty good. 102 dB maximum SPL, so you're not going to get it near any really loud, screaming vocalists anywhere. But like you said, it does record. It does not say on their specs what format it records in. I guess it's a WAV file, hopefully a broadcast WAV file, but I don't know if they have a clock in there so that they could timestamp the recordings. That would be handy. And it records at 32-bit 48 kilohertz. And it has a USB connection on it. I think you can connect it. I don't know whether you're just updating software or interfacing with their software over USB.
They plugged it in and they downloaded the file, so it's just a direct connection.
Just access to the internal memory for the recording. Mm-hmm.
And probably for updates too, yeah.
And it must be that Zaxcom's patent doesn't apply. I'm seeing this on more and more 2.4 gigahertz wireless mics that transmit and record locally, because there's a patent that covers that in the United States. But I think their patent may only have to do with UHF microphones, not 2.4 gigahertz microphones. So that's maybe why all of these escape that patent and can do recording in the microphone.
Yep. Yeah, and most of the time when you've gone overseas, you haven't had to worry about that patent. It's only been the United States, and there's a lot of question as to whether it's enforceable. So I think that folks are starting to kind of eat away at the edges of that. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Paul Wallace in Cedar Creek, Texas. The Lewitt CONNECT 6 desktop 6x6 dual USB-C audio interface for computer and phone or tablet has great features, but its looks are really janky. Did Lewis fail to hire a decent industrial designer?
Good, Bill.
So it looks a little unusual, but there are people who like this kind of style. Here's a picture of it. I think it's the equivalent of in architecture what's called the brutalist style. There are famous buildings that adopted this kind of slabby, very geometrical kind of look. So who knows what taste is? As long as it works correctly. If you don't like it, I guess don't go in that direction, but somebody probably will.
Good. Nigel?
I refer the right honourable gentleman to the Cybertruck.
I mean, really what you're looking at there is what they did is they could have delivered this to you as a box with a lot of air. If you look at actually the design of it, it is literally all they did is the things that look like they're being kind of pushed up, so to speak, are actually just the space that's required for the inputs. So if someone looks, Bill, I think if you go to the next one or the next one after that, you'll see keep going. keep going. No,
3 videos after
just gotta
that. Let me
keep
go
going.
earlier and see if we can get
There we
to
go.
the back of it.
No, you can kind of see it there. So basically, the I/O. There you go.
There it is.
That's the size that they need. So it was a very utilitarian design. It's not. I don't think that it's what they did is they took all the air out. So they said, we're going to put this all in and we're going to flatten it all down and just use what we need to. So it's a minimalist design. We only go up to give the space that we need for the I/O, rather than giving you a box. Whether you like it or not, that's up to you. As I said, as Nigel pointed out, the Cybertruck is a good example. There was a story a long time ago about when Ford did its big, or not Ford, but Dodge did their big redesign. They did a bunch of tests, and they found that 30% of the population was lukewarm about it, and about 55% said they would never buy it ever. Like that the new design that they had, and 15% said they had to have it. They had to have that truck, and so they went to the CEO and they said, "Well, I guess that's a failure." And he goes, "Are you kidding me? We only have 7% of the market." We can, we're definitely going down that path. So oftentimes serving the vertical that makes sense for you makes way more, serving a specific vertical that's passionate about that is more important than serving all of it with kind of a lukewarm gruel. And so I think that's what they took on.
And Alex, there's a comment in the thing. Todd Raines says, by feel, it directs your hand to the knob. So you may not like it in terms of visual, but if it works well for you, there you go.
Exactly. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Omar Gadand in Orange County, California. I'm getting drift on my audio ISOs when recordings are long. Is there any affordable master clock that do LTC, word clock, and gen lock all from the same device? Other solutions?
Courtney?
Well, there are devices that do that. There's the Evertz 5601 MSC, which is a master clock, looks something like this. And it's quite expensive. It's several $1,000s, but it does generate all those signals. If you're just looking to generate a LTC and a master clock with a temperature control crystal, the Denicky GR1 can do it, can generate master clock. And I think it also outputs a 60 hertz word clock at the same time. But it's not going to generate tri-level sync if you need to generate master clock sync for video cameras.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, definitely. Evertz is what I see most often in broadcast facilities and trucks in terms of generating sync. But another option in terms of house clock that's a bit more affordable is a company called ESE. They make the sync generators for word clock and gen lock, as well as timecode generators as well. If you're looking for smaller devices to hang off cameras and the audio recorders, my go-to is the Ambient ACN. It has both timecode and sync outputs, gen lock / word clock, as well as the timecode systems. UltraSync 1 timecode systems has been purchased by Atomos. I don't know what their future is because they haven't released new timecode products in about 5 years, I believe. So at this point, like if you need something smaller, I'd probably lean more towards the ambient stuff.
Next question.
Marielle Zushamara and Webelow says, Epic updates Sony SVG cameras seem pretty great and have some new firmware. Any other Epic updates in things after NAB?
I think that it is, the Blackmagic stuff was pretty, I went and I must have skipped through a lot of their presentation and didn't watch the whole thing, but there's an awful lot of stuff on their website that's new. The micro color controllers and obviously the micro switcher. So those are some of the things that we saw that were, a bit more surprising as well. And then of course some of the stuff we saw at Vislink, this tiny little transmitter for these cameras that the size of a pack of cigarettes was pretty interesting as well. But those are the things that caught my eye. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer at Viera, Florida says, any updates on the Zoom feature enhancement to record presenters on Zoom local to their device, similar to what happens at Riverside.fm?
They promised that. Zoom promised that. We haven't seen it yet. So at some point, we may try to put some pressure on them as a group But we haven't seen it. Local records, this double ending recording, which is what Andy's talking about there. And we were told in the last, I think actually, was it the last one or the one before that? It's been, I think, a year and a half since they announced it, and we still haven't seen an output there. So hopefully they'll keep on considering it. I think it would be a huge add to what Zoom does. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says the EU has ruled that Apple must open iPadOS to sideloading within 6 months to comply with the DMA, the Digital Millennium Act for copyright. Will we see innovative apps? And he's got an Arts Technical link there.
Jeffrey?
Well, technically, you could always sideload something. You just had to jailbreak the device to do it. But in my case, if there is any need for me to have something where I need to sideload apps, I'd probably actually start thinking about not only getting a second iPad, but also setting up a second account. So if there was any malware that comes through that secondary area, that it wouldn't affect my primary address and my primary account. So that's the one thing that I take from there. So maybe Apple will win in that situation if other people think the exact same way that I'm thinking about for using apps with a different third-party app provider. But the other thing is when I use the Android version and I use those sideload apps, I get very nervous as to what I'm loading version-wise, what I'm loading, if there's any type of malware on it, and even though they've been touted up and down that they're safe, they're not as safe as an Apple app store would be.
Go ahead, Nigel.
I don't think this has anything to do with innovative apps, and you're not going to get any innovative apps out of it unless something magical happens. What you're watching is a 30-step chess game going on, and you're in step 3. And nobody knows how this ends. You're watching Apple trying to protect its consumers. You're watching very rich companies trying to get much richer without giving Apple any money. You're watching European companies trying to force the European Union to do things that favor themselves. You're watching a whole bunch of mishmash. The bottom of most of this is what's good for users. And the European community, the Union, has a fairly poor record of taking a long time to come up with a solution which is completely irrelevant when it gets out. You'll notice that you can now actually get sideloading with a separate app store for your iPhone within Europe. Of course, all the people that demanded it hate the way that Apple has done it, surprisingly. So I think we are many steps away from this being resolved. And when it gets resolved, practically all of this will be redundant. But I think Jeffrey made the right point. I will let you download one of these apps first. When it works well for you a year or two later, I might try it.
Yeah, it's become very clear on some of the posts that Apple left the doors wide open. So basically, if you start going down this side loading, the amount of security that you have is dramatically lower. Not like a little lower than Apple's system, but dramatically lower. So the chances of getting really into a tight turn, unless the EU can force Apple, and there's some point where you can't keep on forcing a company to do what it doesn't want to do. Like you can keep on trying to say, well, you can't do this, but this is government is a blunt object, and it's not a scalpel, and it can't tell Apple how to program its every little thing that it can. At some point, you're micromanaging companies, and I just don't think that's actually going to work because Apple still can just keep writing this very slowly, and so but right now they said, okay, you can have it, but what they did is they've opened up they just opened it up and let people they made it easy, but you would be insane to use any of the side loading right now because of the way it's been opened up. It would, if you want to do it, more power to you, but it would be an insane move right now, probably for the next couple of years. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, it depends. It's going to take a while for new stores to develop that have the same level of security that Apple offers you. So I think eventually you will be able to go to a safe site and download stuff cheaper. I don't think they'll necessarily be more innovative, but you may then find some stuff available on iOS now that is competitive with Apple that Apple prevented you from putting on the store before. So you may find some competitive products at a cheaper price.
Courtney,
I don't know how
I think what we should do, Courtney, is
innovative.
take 10 big companies like Spotify, and we should take what they're charging right now, and then we should go out 2 years, and if more than half of them are less in price.
Well, 2 years, the price is always going to go up.
I'll give you $10, but it's not.
Well, that's a safe bet because of inflation alone.
The consumers are never going to win on this. All they're going to do is make more profit. Nothing's going down. Nothing's going down.
Well, maybe not down in price, but you'll have more. You can get more editing programs and programs that duplicate things that are available on iOS that Apple owns that they don't let on the iPhone store.
It'll be fun. Go ahead, Bill.
Alex last week during the show held up the set of keys that open all the TSA locks and made the humorous point. Yesterday, was it? Made the humorous point that once the picture of it got out, then anybody who was any kind of a locksmith or even an amateur could duplicate them just by what they saw on there. I have a feeling this is the same kind of thing. I don't think this is going to end well for those of us who require or have come to depend on Apple's pretty robust R&D into always making security as tight as it can be so that we don't have to worry about all the virus stuff that has infected the computer industry for years. And I'm just not looking forward to this. You crack the door and scofflaws use that to jam their foot in it, and it's hard to get it back closed again. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think this is going to end well.
I think that companies overestimate how many Apple users really want to mess with this. It'll be interesting to see. There's a solid 3 or 4% that'll jump right on this and think that this is great. But I'll argue that well over 90% of the audience of Apple's, users will not bother with any of this. They want it to be all nice and compact, and they're not going to be interested in going down some other path. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
I might point out that there have been several cases of virus-loaded programs being placed onto the Apple Store that they've later had to remove when they discovered them. So you're not always safe. It's not bulletproof. They do get on there.
Yeah, but what?
There's so many submitted
Android,
they can't
compared to Android. Like what is the
I've never gotten a virus from an Android program, and I load stuff from Russia.
Go ahead, Nigel.
This has nothing to do with consumers. So let's stop pretending it does.
No one cares about the user.
Let me explain to you. These are billion-dollar companies who have decided that spending $100 million on lawyers to earn $200 million more revenue is a profitable business model for you. That is all that is going on here, and we shouldn't be deluded in any other way.
Next question.
Paul Wallace is up next from Cedar Creek, Texas, and Paul says, what are the differences and similarities between continuity camera and NDI for Zoom video?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, continuity camera is a feature specific to the Apple ecosystem. It allows you to connect the Apple phones or tablets and use the camera on Macintosh computers that are on the same network and on the same Apple ID. NDI is a full-blown AV over IP protocol, which allows you to transport any sorts of signal from anywhere, from any device or NDI-capable device. So it's if you're comparing the two, continuity camera is very, very limited compared to what the possibilities are with NDI.
Next question.
Aaron Cody in St. Louis, Missouri says, is there a monitor which accepts UVC video input directly? I'd like to use the UVC out of the ATEM minis as the multi-view out on small shows now that the UVC out is routable. If not, am I stuck getting a $150 UVC to HDMI converter, or are there other options?
Yeah, the Atomos Kato, which I'm trying to find really quickly here, is the one that can take UVC that I know of. One monitor. It's a 5-inch monitor. That is, and so that's the one that can do it. I wasn't able, for some reason I couldn't pull it up as fast as I thought I would. But Atomos Kato is the one that you can do that with. Although I have found it to be relatively flaky, and I haven't tried to do it out of a ATEM Mini. So designed to do that as a monitor. Of course, there are the converters that you're referring to, OBSBot and others that make those converters, but the only monitor I know of that takes it in is the Atomos. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem is not only do you have to bring in the video, but you also have to power the monitor. A lot of portable monitors allow for UVC into, like for the MacBook, into the portable monitor. But there are some laptops, if you try to do that, you'll definitely need to plug it in. So that might be the issue that you run into.
And it's not Kato. That's why I couldn't find it so quickly. It's Zato. So I was referring to a famous martial artist as opposed to a monitor. So the Zato Connect is what you're looking for to make that actually work. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and not to be confused, there are monitors like this one. It's so big; it's a 15-inch that take USB-C in, but they're DisplayPort, not UVC. So they take the DisplayPort signal over USB-C and they power the monitor. And you can plug those into your laptop, but I don't believe it would work with the UVC signal out of the ATEM Mini.
Next question.
Walt Palmer in Lewis, Delaware. I have a couple of small size venue events coming up in areas with less than stellar cellular capacity to attempt Zoom connections. Recommendations for LiveU rentals.
Mickey?
Yeah, you mentioned specifically Zoom connections, and with that, I don't think LiveU would be the appropriate solution for your needs. You need general purpose internet as opposed to specifically transporting video. So I would probably lean more towards a Peplink router with multiple modems in it, and if there's hardwire in the venue, that would also be a better option. If you use a Peplink, use their Speed Fusion bonding service in order to be able to bond those multiple modems when it gets to the cloud.
And we've had a lot of trouble with bonding as it relates to WebRTC. The jitter tends to create some irregularities, so you do have to be careful with bonding. Starlink obviously is another option. You may not have enough sky to do that, but something to think about there. So Starlink. Another thing to think about is if you can see that venue from another venue that has good bandwidth or another location, is thinking about point-to-point microwave and having something like that you have available to you. So an air fiber is what I've used in the past from Ubiquiti. And you can get full duplex air fibers that will do a gig at 10 miles. So you just have to be able to see where you're going. You have to see it. And basically you have plus or minus 2 degrees. And what will happen is that what I do is use GPS or use maps to figure out where that might be, that if it's miles away. And you get that kind of lined up, and then you can dial it in very, very slowly and align those perfectly so that you get that high bandwidth. So that's something to kind of think about. Again, that takes a little bit of work ahead of time. Oftentimes, we do walkthroughs and tests weeks before we actually use those venues if we're going to put in an air fiber. But then none of the other options are particularly cost effective, but you can get an internet connection from a satellite truck. But obviously your delay will be much higher because you're going to space. So you can expect at least 600 milliseconds of delay each way on top of the jump to the server. So you're really looking at an 800 millisecond on each leg minimum if you're using a sat truck. But it can have a buck on it, and you can actually turn it into an internet connection. Most trucks can do this now. Next question.
Omar Gaden in Orange County, California says, I have a vintage Neumann U47 FET. I'm jealous. From the mid-1970s. It was likely sitting unused for 30 plus years. I have confirmed signal, but not sure of quality. I'd like to get it serviced. How should I go about this for such an old, iconic mic?
Good, Mickey.
Yeah, if you yourself aren't comfortable refurbishing the mic and you don't have a go-to technician to do this for you, I'd go ahead and give Sennheiser a call or Neumann a call. Sennheiser owns Neumann, and send it in for refurbishment.
Good, Courtney.
Yeah, and the nice thing about vintage microphones is if they sound good, use it. They're probably okay. The thing that might fail on that's an FETs, which is probably long-lived. The tube types, which are much more expensive. Wish you had this one, huh? The U47 tube, $26,000. Not a bad price. But the things that might go bad are the low frequency roll off. The capacitors in there could go bad. So they might have to be replaced. But if you're not using that low frequency roll off, it may sound just fine. And if it sounds good, hey, it's a microphone. Use it.
Go, Bill.
One more thing. There are a lot of Usenet news groups and other things that are very much dedicated to vintage microphones. And you find in those discussions the rare technician who came out of factory training and things like that and who will do it in their backyard seriously, not as just an amateur, but these are the people who are really, really good at preserving old microphones. So it might be wise to look at some of the news groups, spend some time listening to the discussion, and you will eventually see the people who are highly respected in those communities of aficionados for vintage microphones and figure out who you can trust, maybe send it to them across the country, wherever they happen to be.
Mickey?
Yeah, since so, as Courtney mentioned, it's the FET version, so there's certainly less things to watch out for there. Like you don't have tubes to maintain and replace every couple of years. But yeah, build a relationship with a local technician, someone who over years will learn your microphone collection, your microphone locker, and will know the intricacies, which mics of yours are temperamental, which mics of yours you use a lot. Someone you can build a relationship with in terms of maintaining your mic locker.
I realized, I was thinking when he said that, the Neumann U47, I was thinking, oh, that's back in that's like a mic from the 50s. And then I realized, no, 30 years is a mic from the early 90s. And it made me feel very old. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, as far as having them serviced, I'd be careful because a lot of these new people don't know, especially vintage microphones, they don't know what was used 30 years ago, and they may not have all the information. So if it sounds good, I would not send it to be serviced just to be serviced. I mean, here's an example. I have this MK41, which I sent it over to Location Sound. Yes, I'm going to diss you for a moment, Location Sound. And their technicians, I was going to put it up for consignment, and their technicians plugged it in. It's from 45 years ago. Their technicians plugged it in and said, oh, this is dead. It doesn't work. I went, no, it works perfectly fine. No, it's dead. We can't sell it. I said, it is T-powered. It's a different type of power than 48 volts. It's 12 volt T. Yeah, well, we tried it on T-power. It didn't work. Yeah, well, they didn't because they don't know what they're doing. And so I took it back from them. It works great. You just have to have the right kind of connection to it for power.
And Courtney, it's not these young people. It's whippersnappers.
Whippersnappers.
Right.
Damn darn whippersnappers don't know nothing about T-power.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Gabriela Estacio Mira. I keep doing this. Mastira, and I apologize. And they're in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. When people in the panel say things like, we were all playing with this the other day, like Jeffrey's NDI party yesterday, what community do we need to join so we can be part of these events? They don't seem to be part of anything announced here.
And we'll keep this quick. Generally, this is a question for Sundays. So if you want to come in on Sundays, and how you get into that community is to go to OfficeHours.global, join us, and then you can get on the email, and from there you can start to know that these things are happening. But we'll answer quickly. Jeffrey?
Yeah, quickly. It's you just get connections. Yesterday it was Jeff Keithley's event, but I've been in Facebook groups where they say, hey, we need 20 people to jump on so we can test this or that. So it can be anything. Just have to network.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, exactly. Be more active in various aspects of the Office Hours community. A lot of us actually work together on proper productions. So when you build those relationships, you get pulled into these things. Hey, and people just start gathering and testing things together.
Yeah, the first step is to get on the email list. Second step is to get into Discord. And the third step is to start getting involved with some of the things that we're working on, and you'll start to get to know people. Next question.
On Oahu, Black Bear Marshall in the Oahu Nation says, I asked a question about brand identity on the day where that was the topic and was told that my questions won't get answered. I'm now very confused. This doesn't seem to match brand marketing. Should I just not ask more questions? What's the identity for this audience?
Yeah, the main thing is that we don't answer every question that comes in on the QR code because they're not well formed. So if you say things in the questions that are hard to read, or sometimes people use a lot of metaphors that we're not going to use, and so or if it's a more Sunday question, there's a high probability, or if it has a bunch of question marks in it. So if we see a bunch of questions all stacked in together, those are the kind of things that we tend to not answer. Those just get rejected. So just know that it does have to be a fairly well-formed question, and generally not use a lot of metaphors. Just be straight ahead with what you're asking for. And I think that generally we get to most of those questions. And it also comes down to the people watching and voting on it, which are in Makana. So if you want a better chance of your question getting answered, or at least be able to ask more questions there, go to OfficeHours.global and join us. You'll start getting an email. And then it'll also have a link on how you can get into Makana, and then you're more on the inside than on the outside. But the QR code is great. It's convenient. You can ask 24/7. So that's a great way to get started. But once you get more serious, you might want to get into Discord and Makana. Next question.
Brian Taylor in Washington, D.C. comes up next. Recent experience telltale green flash EMI interference in my HDMI attached LiveU Go Solo signal. Is there a known brand of HDMI cable with the proper shielding to prevent this? And that's a QR code question.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, the green flash to me signifies a loss of sync in the HDMI signal. With this, I would definitely not run HDMI cables longer than 3 meters. Over that, I'd switch over to a fully SDI workflow. And in terms of brands of cables, I've had good experience with HDMI cables from Infinite Cables, also NTW, and even the house brand of B&H. I believe they call it Pearstone.
Next question.
A Barara in Flowery Branch, that's Georgia, looking for a dock for my M1 Mac Studio so I can have more connections. Any recommendations?
Go ahead, Nigel.
I can tell you the one I've been looking at, and it's the Saatchi, I think they're pronounced. This is it. It will work with a Mini or a Studio. I actually think it would be better with a Mini because the Studio already has a bunch of connections, and this adds more USB A, but not many more USB-C. So that's the one I've been looking at. I haven't found a lot of other ones. There are plenty of docks under your desk, around the back of your head, in a rack, but there's relatively few that add more connections that I found anyway.
Yeah, Nigel, you can send me your address. I'll send you the 2 that I have. You can test them and see if they work better for you than they did for me.
Okay. Happy to.
Happy to. They're just sitting there gathering dust. I had a problem with one of the drives constantly, so it has that little drive insert, and you have to plug on. The drive would appear and disappear constantly, and so it just really took all the fun out of having it there, because the drive is there, and then it keeps on, and then it would actually cause disruptions within my computer. So that one I haven't been that excited about. I do believe that. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's OWC makes one as well. I believe that's a little bit beefier than the Saatchi, and I might think about that one. Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
So the problem with that is you have the security issues inside a Mac that's always going to disconnect the drive or put the drive to sleep, and you've got to change all of that.
I got to say, one of them worked and the other one didn't. Like, it was just one of them worked fine, and the other one was like constantly coming on and off. So I think it was something in the hardware there. And
that comes to the next point. We talk about OWC a lot. I like the pluggable dock that's Thunderbolt 4. I'm testing the Kensington came out with a Thunderbolt 4 dock, but it's really about the connections that you need inside. If you don't need a Ethernet plug inside your dock, then you need to look towards what you do need. If you need multiple USB-A, if you need an NVMe that's inside of the dock, if you need USB-C power through or anything like that, it's got to tailor to you. And then, of course, what's the chipset inside of there? And that's the key to a lot of these docks is, as Courtney alluded to before, DisplayPort is not a thing that's in a lot of docks. For pluggable, it is. So if you want to hook up multiple monitors, more than two, then you want to get something with display ports so you can use their software to do that. But then something like the OWC will be completely useless to you because it doesn't have that in there. So it's really about what you need for your dock and then finding the right one. Once we find out what you need to have for the dock, then we can really give you a good answer to this question.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the OWC dock. The ones I use are this one, the 11-port dock. I like this because it has 3 Thunderbolt ports on top of the actual host connection, and also the OWC Thunderbolt Pro dock because it has a CF Express card slot in it.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, for my OWC, one of the things I learned was that you have to be very careful about what you hang off of them, particularly in terms of monitors. Depending on the beefiness of your GPU in your laptop or your computer or whatever, you may or may not have so many monitors hung off of it that you're actually stressing out the dock and being able to pass all those signals through correctly. I had some trouble reconnecting one of my systems, so I called OWC and I got through to service, and they walked me through it, but they said specifically, okay, is your laptop connected to the front USB-C port, not one of the other ones, because it, I think, has those extra capabilities, unlike some of the others. So it just was a matter of reconfiguring it correctly. And I just learned that day that sometimes you have to be very careful. If I hooked it up the wrong way, certain things would not work. When I got everything right, everything out of the dock worked. So there's more sophistication going on in these docks than I occasionally thought. I thought if it's just a USB-C port, I can plug anything in there and it'll just pass through and everything will work fine. Turned out not to be entirely true. So be careful as you're arranging your docks.
Next question.
Samuel Nordvik in Norway. How would you go about changing the pitch of a sped-up audio voice recording to reduce the chipmunk effect?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, and a lot of professional DAWs, especially the ones used for post-production sound, they're built-in speed and time processors are very good in terms of maintaining pitch if you want it to. Like say in Pro Tools, I use Elastic Audio and also the built-in Elastic Audio with the built-in Vari-Speed processor to be able to do things like say those legal disclaimers at the end of ads where you have to squeeze 10 seconds of a disclaimer down to 2 seconds, and it does it very cleanly. There's also a plugin from Serato, the DJ company called Pitch and Time, that also does it very well.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, what Mickey said, most digital editing, digital audio workstations have the ability to change the length of time that a piece of audio plays back. And it does this by changing the sample rate, and then it pitch corrects to get it back to the normal pitch. You can maybe turn off pitch correction if you have a audio track that was brought in at the wrong sample rate. Let's say it was 44.1 and you've got a 48 kilohertz sample rate timeline. That may be what's causing the speeded up chipmunk effect. So make sure that it's set to the right sample rate for your project that you're bringing in. Or you can use any of the tools that are in there in most workstations that let you just pitch shift and just pitch shift it down till it sounds normal.
Go ahead, Bill.
And as was mentioned before, a lot of the NLEs do this automatically now. I am delighted that Final Cut, which I work on, has a really good algorithm for pitch shifting, because in the case of recording all my audiobooks, which I do in Final Cut because its audio system is pretty clean, I can do double speed everything when I'm reviewing everything, and I very seldom miss any kind of change or something like that. So the fact that you can cut a 14-hour book review to 7 hours is worth its weight in platinum. So thanks to the engineers for doing this. It's really useful.
Next question.
Next question comes to me from Lenny Nelson in San Antonio. Are there any best practices for capturing objects with Polycam? I'm trying to capture a simple cube-shaped device, and the results have been less than optimal.
Yeah, so Polycam can be a little bit quirky, I guess is a good word there. So there's a couple things that you have to do. Number one is think about suspending it off of a tabletop area. So what I have is a tripod. It's not quite. It's a little out of reach. What I did is I have a tripod that I put a cheese plate on, and I put some little rubber dots on it, and I take my objects and I set them on it, and it's about 4 feet high. And what that means is that I can get up and over. I can get over the object comfortably, but I can get under the object as well. And so I can move around it. Now, the other things that you want to do is you want to have relatively even lighting around it if you can. So if you have a big window, for instance, coming in, that's going to make it very hard for it to figure out what's going on. More texture in the background actually helps it a little bit off in the distance there, because it'll use it to figure out where it is. But mostly what matters is what you're taking pictures of, and you should see it. So basically, going over it. And the other thing with Polycam is that you have to get used to passing over something. When you see that it's covered it in detail, stop, keep moving. If you keep on going back over the same area, it can often recalculate that and become actually less accurate. So it's better to keep moving through that. And that's the same thing. I just captured something where I captured like 2 floors of a house in Polycam, and the key was to keep moving. And it's never going to be perfect. In Polycam, there are reality capture does a better job. We're going to talk about more of that with Nick Justishin on Tuesdays. Apple has its own reality composer, which also has a capture function in it, and that one is also, it's very methodical as far as how it asks you to get things, and it can produce. It takes a little longer than Polycam does. Polycam, you can whip out something fairly quickly, but again, resolution using only the LiDAR is a little bit more tricky. The other way that you can change the settings in Polycam is to move Polycam to photogrammetry or photo instead of LiDAR. That's going to take a lot longer, and it has to upload, and you have to leave your phone alone while it's uploading. But it will give you much higher detailed results when it works. But it has been a little hit and miss for me. So those are a couple of the options there to do it. Still, for me, the gold standard has been, for smaller objects, reality capture has been really, really great with some of the apps. And I stopped using it because I didn't understand their token system. They've just gotten rid of that last week. So I just was like, I don't understand how to pay for this. I don't understand where I'm going to get charged. It was a horrible idea. And they've realized that it was a horrible idea, or this is what they're planning eventually anyway. But now reality capture is free as long as you're making, I think, less than $1 million. I think it's included now with the new Unreal Engine tools that you might have to charge. If you make more than $1 million, you might have to pay $1,800 a seat or something like that for it. So anyway, point is I would look at reality capture. Other one is Metashape, which I've used for a decade, which is also just take a bunch of photos and put it up there. The only thing to make sure of if you're taking a bunch of photos is to make sure you lock your focal length. You use only the 1x, and 1x is generally the best one, and set that to 48 megapixel if you're on an iPhone. Android I know less about. Next question.
Aaron Cody in St. Louis, Missouri, up next. Would you even consider buying a production-grade PC laptop without a Thunderbolt port in 2024? I haven't shopped in a while and have been surprised by how limited the selection still is. Favorite production PC laptop?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was reading this as desktop. Sorry, instead of laptop. But laptop, any of the gaming laptops make good production, and most of them do have a Thunderbolt port on them, at least one. So take a look at those. There's some from Dell, from the Alien line, and I forget the name. MSI. MSI makes some good, pretty inexpensive gaming laptops that have GeForce, 4070s, 4060s in them usually, for a reasonable price, around $2,000, that do have, Thunderbolt ports on them. But you need Thunderbolt less and less, depends on what you want to hook up to it. If you're hooking up external displays, they almost always come with HDMI 2.1 ports that handle up to 8K. So you can find, pretty decent gaming laptops out there, which you could use for production easily, and they all have the ability to hook large external storage to them.
Go, Jeffrey.
So, yeah, actually, there are some production PCs with USB 4 rather than Thunderbolt 4. There is differences. There's also a lot of similarities, and you can use Thunderbolt with USB 4 and 4 with Thunderbolt. You can do a lot of reading on that. Thunderbolt 5 actually is a specification that's going to be coming out in September, so that's going to start upping the game because it's like 120 gigabit throughput, if I remember correctly. But the bottom line is, if your production laptop doesn't really need external connections, maybe just a simple Ethernet 2.5 gigabit or 10 gigabit Ethernet, USB 3.0, 3.2 will be able to handle something like that. And of course, your laptop then would need things like, as Courtney said, something with a discrete video card, like an NVIDIA card inside there to really run the machine. But yeah, you can definitely use it without a Thunderbolt. As for laptops, of course, Macs, they're going to be with Thunderbolt 4. For the PC side, Asus Republic of Gaming is a good one. I just did the interview at NAB with HP's ZBook series, which they have this Fury, which is like 16 terabytes worth of hard drive space inside. It's a powerhouse for a laptop. And then, of course, Dell has their Alienware, which has a lot of great features to it.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. Has anyone used software-based monitor control plugins like Sonnox Listenhub? That's Sonnox. It looks very useful for switching between monitor paths from your digital audio workstation.
Good, Mickey.
No, I have not, because I don't want to be limited in terms of what I can monitor and what I can monitor through. I don't want to be tied to having, say, a computer up and running just to be able to send signal into my monitor. So I prefer hardware monitor controls for that. I can send, I can plug in my phone or an iPod into my monitors if I have to listen to those and not have to rely on computer being up and running.
Next question.
Bobby Rafferty in Central Florida wonders, if you had a depth map of a photo, could you change its focal length?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, there were some cameras out there, light field cameras, that allowed you to do this. Lytro was the name of the company. They went bankrupt. So once it's the photo is taken, you normally can't change its photo length. You can simulate a change of focal length if some of it's in focus with software and post-processing. Even if you don't know, you can assume a depth of field on it rather than knowing the depth of field on it. So you can artificially, make it look like a different photo length. This is what the portrait mode does on your phone if you have an iPhone. So because it just, blurs the back, does a Gaussian blur on what it detects at the background. And a lot of Android phones that don't even have LiDAR or any type of depth detection on it can figure this out from analyzing the photo and determining what's in the foreground.
Yeah, and a lot of our photos now have this depth information, and you can change the focal point, so where it's focused to. But yeah, focal length is much different. Next question.
Bob in Ohio. Is it time to start referring to office hours as OfficeHours.global in an effort to always push people to the website? Just using office hours doesn't offer a lot of information as to who we are, and searches are full of other results. QR code question.
Again, this is a great question for the Sunday questions. I'll say shortly, we say Office Hours Global within the first 10 or 15 seconds every time we get on the show. So I think we're still talking about it there. But again, this is a great question to ask on Sundays. We'll chew on it in more detail. Next question.
Roz Humphreys in Comex, British Columbia. I am now shopping for an app to automate the length of audio effects and sound like Sonic Fire. What are some of the other apps that do this? Thanks all.
I don't know a lot of other ones that do it, at least at that level. So yeah, I think you might have stumped us there. So we'll keep moving. Next question.
Leo Mindell in Richmond, UK. Following on the open iPadOS question, do you think the EU forcing the USB-C on Apple was a good thing or a bad thing?
Go ahead, Nigel.
I think it was a thing. And I'm not even sure they really forced Apple as much as we like to write the story they did. Apple was going to have to move off Lightning at some point. So I think the question for Apple would have been go to a USB-C type or go to something completely different. And if they went to something completely different, would the benefit of selling us a whole new bunch of cables be more than, the cost of going with it? I think the other thing, and I think, Jeffrey just did a good example of this. Was it USB-C? Was it Thunderbolt? My iPad Pro is Thunderbolt. My, is PC. Now I've got a cable problem. So I think they were going to have to do something. And I think we maybe over-romance a little bit that they forced Apple. Apple had to make it a change, and it probably made the decision easier for them.
I think the real story is that Apple was able to delay the rollout of USB-C until they were good and ready. If you look at the rest of their line, they were moving to USB-C anyway. It was just that they didn't want to be rushed to do it, and I think and they didn't like the precedent of the EU starting to tell people how they're going to build their machines. But I don't think that the iPhone with USB-C came out 1 year earlier than Apple had planned 5 years ago. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. I think at the one point they were thinking to themselves, okay, if we build the Lightning cable, we can control the Lightning cable. And then they found out we can't really control the Lightning cable, so we might as well get with this with the program. And I think a lot of people that bought the iPhone 15 was because of that USB-C, so they could hook up their drives. They could hook up other things to it. The only problem is I got a box of cables right behind me, and if I hook up any cable to the device, there's always going to be, it's basically going to be a crapshoot if it really works or not, or if I just have to throw away that cable.
I go, Courtney.
There's good things about it and bad things. The good thing is there's no more proprietary connector on it. The bad thing is USB-C is a moving target, as was mentioned earlier. You have chargers and then have USB-A and USB-C. The problem with USB-A is always 5 volts. USB-C, it could be 5 volts, 9 volts, 12 volts, 20 volts. It's multi-voltage as far as charging goes, plus it has different signals available. Thunderbolt, video, DisplayPort. And not all cables and not all devices are equal. So you have to be able to adapt when you're plugging USB-C devices into other devices to make sure that they're compliant with each other. They're supposed to check and follow a protocol, but a lot of times some things don't have all the protocols in their lookup table, so that they may not work correctly.
Go, Bill.
Yeah. Also, the power delivery thing is really weird to me. I came in one day and I looked on my desktop and I had a meeting starting, and sure enough, my MagSafe powered connector on my laptop had been disconnected somehow. I don't know how it happened, and I freaked out thinking, "Oh my gosh, my laptop's going to be empty right before this thing." And I quickly reached to grab it, and I looked up, and it was at 100%. And I went, "Why is it at 100%? The power's been disconnected overnight." And it turns out that because I had an OWC dock connected into my laptop, when it lost that power stream, it just took the 100 watts from the OWC dock, and everything kept charging and going along. So I suddenly had to reorient my thinking to, this system is very smart, and a lot of cables carry a lot of things. And one of the things about Thunderbolt/USB-C cable is they're rated, generally, the good ones, up to 100 watts of power delivery. So I had to start rethinking, do I really need to plug it in with the MagSafe thing? I've already got power going in somewhere else. It's just a little more complex than it used to be.
Next question.
Next question comes from Jason Robertshaw in Sarasota, Florida. I have a Panasonic PTZ AW-HE120 that's gone kaput. Recommendations for a comparable replacement in the same feature and price range from Panasonic?
I believe that the 150 will be the next one up that you would use. I think that it's a slightly more capable version, but it probably has much of the same color science, of course, in the same price range. The ones that we're using for the most part of the Sony FR7s, those are a much, much higher quality, but it will not match with the other Panasonics that you have now. Next question.
John Maruka in Raleigh, North Carolina. Does anyone know if there is software to round-trip a multi-track audio editing session between Mac OS and iOS?
My guess, I don't know how Logic handles that. So I don't know whether Logic is, could possibly do that. Logic, of course, is on the iPad, as well as on the Mac. So it may be able to do that, but I don't know of another app that would do that. Again, Resolve could possibly do it as well. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. Check Resolve because they have an iPad version and they have a Mac version, and they have Fairlight built into it. So maybe that would work for you if your project is in Fairlight Multitrack.
Coming up next, we have, coming up next in this week, we have Telling Stories with Editing. That'll be tomorrow, and Bill will be helming that discussion. And Friday, the latest in cloud tech. So we'll be getting an update from the team as to where, we'll have some cloud experts here talking about, the cloud and production in the cloud as we move forward. So that's a good one to ask those questions that you have about how to get things in and out and how to get them between servers and how to control them all there. Saturday and Sunday, of course, are our Q&A sessions, pure Q&A. Sunday, of course, is the more introspective one, as I've been pushing a little bit more as we talked here. If you have questions about office hours, if you have philosophical questions about the industry, those are the days the day to ask that is on Sunday. And you need to be inside of Makana to do that. So if you are just using the QR code or you're just watching this, you need to go to Office Hours. You need to go to OfficeHours.global and hit Join Us. And when you hit Join Us, you can then get into the email list. And then you'll be starting to get the emails. We'll start to tell you when it's happening, and you'll be able to get into Makana. It's at the bottom, a little link. You might want to join Discord. Those are the best ways to be part of Sunday.